I would say that, things seem pretty bleak at the moment, but I would have hope that there's light at the end of the tunnel and there's hope on the horizon. With the new classification that's coming out in December, the aim is for that to increase people being diagnosed and have more access to management and care.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Runna, your favorite local running community. I'm Juliana, and this week we have a very special guest for you, someone who I'm very interested to talk to. We have Laura Bloom, who is the CEO of the Ehlers-Danlos Society. And Laura, thank you so much for being here today.
Such a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm definitely very excited to speak with you as someone who has EDS. And just for anyone who's listening, Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome is generally abbreviating EDS, and we'll probably just refer to it as EDS going forward, just for time's sake, But as someone who has EDS, I'm definitely super interested to talk to someone who is kind of at the helm of everything, I would say, EDS related, more or less.
Yeah, I've been working in this space now for about 16 years. So around the UK organization for 5 years, and then set this up in 2010. 2016. So it's our 10-year anniversary this year.
Wow. Now, were you part of the actual forming of the EDS Society? Were you in the trenches with that?
Yeah, so it's complicated because we actually relaunched from EDNF, which was the US organization. Mm-hmm. And so we kind of stood on the shoulders of what had been before us as a US organization with a new mission, new board, new vision. And so it founded the new version of what it is. But we, like I said, we kind of set it on the foundations of what had been there before.
And now it's a global society.
Now we're global, whereas before it was a US only advocacy organization. And now we're global, doing research, doing education. And that's quite awesome. A different organization.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as you already know, it's definitely really important that it's not just stuck to one country, because EDS knows no borders, and most chronic illnesses don't have a sense for what a border is and isn't. Yeah. But I thank you again for being part of that, and also for talking with us today. But let's get into maybe your history, maybe how you kind of got really, discovered what EDS is, and if you want to share any part of your diagnosis story, please go for it, and I'll just let you take the floor from there.
Okay, great. So Ehlers-Danlos syndromes are a group of genetic connective tissue conditions. And there's currently 13 types. There was a 14th type published after the recent classification. So depending on who you ask, there's 13 or 14 types. And we know the pathogenic variant for all of them but one. Pathogenic variant means the thing genetically that causes the disease. And we know that for all of them, and they are on the whole rare and ultra rare. And then we have the hypermobile form, which we don't know the cause for at the moment. And that is actually much more prevalent and is not a rare disease, we don't think, at this point. And so there's also, to complicate things even further, HSD, which are the hypermobility spectrum disorders, which also fall under the work we do at the Society. And, hypermobile EDS and HSD could definitely become one of the most mis- and underdiagnosed conditions of our time. It's multisystemic, it affects all different parts of the body. The rarer monogenic types also multisystemic. They can also, unfortunately, reduce life expectancy in some of the types like vascular EDS, for example, and it can affect skin, fragility and stability and things like that. So it's on the whole very difficult to diagnose. The average diagnostic odyssey is 12 plus years. Recent survey we did said it was actually probably more like 2 decades. So it's really difficult. And I was a good example of that. It took me 13 years to be diagnosed. I was symptomatic from the age of 11 and then diagnosed when I was 24 with hypermobile EDS. And at the beginning, I've got a lot more wrong technically on paper now, but I actually live a very good quality of life now, whereas when I was diagnosed, I didn't have any understanding or knowledge about the condition, about how to manage it. There's no therapeutics, there's no cure, and there's very few doctors out there that know about it and are willing to treat it. So when I was diagnosed, I was very deconditioned. The most I could really walk without pain, preventing me from walking any further, was 1 to 2 miles. I think it's natural human instinct that when you feel pain and you're fatigued, you stop. And so a lot of people that don't have the support around them don't move as much as they could or should, because it hurts and it's exhausting. And then there's lots of comorbidities such as autonomic dysfunction, GI issues that get in the way as well. So it was very difficult to move or do anything without really quite disabling pain. And at points I was in a wheelchair from time to time with my POTS, which is postural tachycardia syndrome, which is autonomic dysfunction, which is simply put when your blood pressure is too low and your heart rate is too high. And every time you go to stand, it makes you feel like you want to faint, throw up, and everything in between. So that was kind of my situation around the age of 24. And when I was finally diagnosed, I spent a couple of years trying to find out as much as I could. I still hadn't ever met another person with the condition. And I just kind of went about life as it was. I was a photographer at the time. And I was increasingly realizing that I needed to pick another career, one that didn't involve carrying heavy equipment and standing for long periods of time. So I decided to take myself back to uni and study global politics and international relations. And that wasn't until 2009. So I was almost 29 at this point. So that period of time between 24 and 29, I was really quite on my own, not really understanding or knowing anything. I was just grateful that I had the validation of that diagnosis, that I was finally told there was actually something going on. It wasn't in my head. And in 2000, I think it was 2008 or 2009, I actually ended up going to the US to an EDNF conference and met people there for the first time ever with the condition, and doctors. And it was very, very validating process. And it was scary as well at times. And I walked away thinking, I wish there was something like that in the US. And I asked my doctor at the time, Professor Rodney Graham, the late Professor Graham, he passed away, unfortunately, quite recently. And I asked him, why is there nothing like that in the UK? And he said, well, there is this small support group called Ehlers-Danlos Support UK. You could reach out to them. And I tried, and they never got back to me, and they weren't really running any events. So I just put that to the back burner. And then I think it was September of 2009. I was just about to start my degree. And as I said, I was a photographer, and I went to a Getty Images event. That's where I used to work. And I met a friend of a friend of a friend, and we were talking, and he said, oh, didn't you used to work here? And I said, yeah, I had to leave, and I'm looking at a new career. It's a long, boring story. I don't want to bore you. And he said, try me. And I said, well, I've got this health condition called EDS. And he said, oh my God, my daughter died of that when she was 19. She had vascular EDS. And it was the first time I'd met someone impacted by the condition in the UK. And we sat and we just talked for hours that night. And he said he'd been also trying to get hold of the charity in the UK, and he wanted to donate some money. And so we both set aside time to really reach out and try and contact them. And we finally got a hold of them. And he said, do me a favor, write on a piece of paper everything you'd want from a UK charity, everything you needed when you were diagnosed. And I did just that. And I wrote everything you could think of. And we went to this tiny church hall in Aldershot and met a lovely lady there who was working at the time and on the board. And we both sat there saying, you know, we think this could be big and great. And I've got all these ideas for you, and you should do this, you should do that, and you should change your name to EDS UK, and you should get on social media, and you should put on events. And the guy said, I've decided what I want to do with my money. I know that you're looking for a part-time job whilst you do your degree. Why don't you do everything that you just said on that piece of paper? I'll pay your salary for 4 years, and then you can go off and do whatever you want. And I was like, no, I've never done anything like that in my life. I don't know what I'm doing. And he said, well, sometimes it's that lived experience that can really make something come to reality. So that's what I did. And initially it was just me working in my bedroom. And then by the time I left, we had an office with 6 or 7 staff, and we were one of the biggest EDS charities in the world. And we did change our name to EDS UK. But I realized that the work we were doing there was just putting what you call a band-aid, what I call a plaster over a big gaping wound. And to try and really heal it and fix it, we needed to really go global. And so in 2016, left there and set up the global organization, which is the Ehlers-Danlos Society, and haven't looked back since. So it's definitely threw me into a different career I wasn't expecting. I did graduate from my degree, and just realized there was so much work that needed to be done. And that I was really enjoying doing it. So, and I got to live out my politics with all the lobbying and advocacy work and policy work that I get to do. So probably more so than I ever would have done in any other field. So it's been a good outcome all round.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was the story of like the EDS Society, and like huge kudos to you for seeing like the need and really being driven to be like, no, I'm going to make this happen because like I know how important it is to me and the other people who this is affecting. Because you're exactly right. Like I mean, for me, isolation is the thing that definitely causes people to like just do things that are very negative. And also it's just makes it harder to deal with a chronic illness when you're not only dealing with like all the stress of whatever your body is doing, plus like that feeling of like, oh, it's just me. I am like by myself. I have to do this all on my own. So thank you for pioneering that, honestly.
Thank you.
Like huge kudos to you. Now, when you were starting the organization, like what were your like top priorities for things that you wanted to provide as like the EDS, what would become the EDS Society? Was there like specific tent poles that you had for like action steps you wanted to take initially?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was to break down fragmentation and siloed working between both national patient organizations, but also the researchers and doctors. They didn't have anyone to bring them together. And so the first thing that we did as the society was establish the International Consortium. And that they have really been incredible force in driving the research and the publications and writing the papers over the last decade. And they were really grateful for there being a place to actually facilitate and administrate their work. We leave the work independent, so it's what they put out. We don't control that, but they really needed help to administer it. So that was one of the biggest things. And then, of course, to raise money for research. And the first few years, we thought that money would come rolling in, and it absolutely didn't. And it took a couple of years, but between 2018 and now, we've raised about $48 million in research money, which is, we're really proud of that. And it's enabled us to build a registry, a global biobank, do pioneering biomarker work, and offer grants to researchers that have never been there before.
That's amazing. And I mean, I'm definitely going to double down on the first thing that you said about just the communication between healthcare professionals, research professionals, people with EDS, it's that cross-referencing, that just like siloing off of different like healthcare, like sectors, even like you see a cardiologist and that person doesn't talk to your rheumatologist, who doesn't talk to your PCP. And like, obviously that's blown up even further on a global scale when other like organizations are talking to each other. But I feel like you can speak from your personal experience too, I'm sure, if you'd like. But I feel like that's one of the biggest challenges we face as someone with EDS is it's the siloing plus the lack of education on exactly what EDS is. And I would also throw in there a fear to diagnose people, mostly kind of from my experience, driven by that lack of knowledge. I don't know if you want to speak to that at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's not effectively taught in medical school. It's a paragraph of that. Our healthcare systems are set up for the acute and not the chronic.
Yeah.
And I think that, people in primary care settings don't get the time and space they need to be listened to and believed and validated. And so often people are told it's in their heads. Also, you could go to the doctor with knee pain, dislocating knee and GI symptoms, and they're not going to see that as two connected things. So you've got to look at the whole holistic picture and a whole multi-systemic approach. And that's really lacking in healthcare systems broadly, not just with EDS. But of course, EDS is a great example of that because of how multi-systemic it is. So yeah, we need better education. We need people to accept that they need to be re-educated on what they think these conditions are.
Yeah.
And we need, people to start talking to each other. But we also need primary care to step up. And we're doing a lot of work right now with Harvard Medical School, the global policy research team there to develop models of care in the UK, US, and Canada as a starting point, based in primary care, because we really believe that that's where it should be managed. There's no such thing as an EDS expert. It's inappropriate for hEDS and HSD to necessarily be managed by genetics, because at the moment we don't know the genetic cause for it, but that's where they get lumped, and geneticists won't see them, so they're just left hanging with no one to care for them. And it should really sit in that primary healthcare space to be managed long term. And it's something that does need to be managed long term. So family setting, GP setting is the perfect place for that.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I currently have a sports physician who's kind of like at the helm of my EDS specific treatment, but I've also, like, last January, I think I went to 12 doctor's appointments, all with different specialists, and they were all telling me different things until I finally found a hypermobility EDS knowledgeable sports physician combined with a EDS knowledgeable, very EDS knowledgeable physical therapist, who then both collectively on their own said the same thing, and then has like led me to feeling a million times better here 6 months later. But I definitely agree too that I think if we can find some ways to like educate primary care, because they're kind of like the first touch point for most people. And yeah, but I mean, even I live in Massachusetts, so we have like a pretty good healthcare system, more or less. Like there are a lot of like really high end specialists who are in the Boston area. And even here, like you can't really see a geneticist. You can't really, like, they have a genetic clinic that I'm on the wait list for still, but they told me it'd be like 3 years. And I'm like, great. That's useful. So, but like, and I understand that like I am in a place that has like a pretty robust medical system. If you live somewhere that's very rural, or like just is a country that doesn't have a good established like research system, whatever it is, like I could even go to Harvard if I really wanted to. It's a drivable distance from me, things like that. But it definitely would be great if more PCPs were like educated on these things. And I guess my question for you is like, what do we want these PCPs to know? Like, what are the tent poles for you and the society as like what we should like generally be educating these PCPs about, more or less?
Well, in December 2026, an updated classification, diagnostic criteria and pathways are coming out in the American Journal of Medical Genetics. And we're doing a big dissemination piece of work to get those out and to create pathways and resources for doctors to be able to do it. So we've been intentionally kind of holding off for now because we really want them to be using the most updated information. So we're hoping from next year onwards, it's going to be a much better place to be able to get diagnosed and managed with these conditions.
Awesome. Yeah. And as soon as that comes out, I will definitely, I have a very kind PCP who has actually said, like, before I got diagnosed with EDS, he pretty much said, like, oh, Julianne, you have all the symptoms, so we'll just treat it like it is. Like, he doesn't know too much about it, but I'll definitely bring all that information back to him, because he's definitely very receptive to those things. And if that helps one other person out, we've done our due diligence.
Absolutely.
So that's great. Now, from like a personal level, like, what things have you found that have been helpful for you when it comes to either like managing your EDS or just like maybe communicating with the doctors that you are seeing, or like some specialists that you feel like, yep, this for me personally, this has been a game changer. Just because I know personally that, and you know this more than I do, EDS affects everyone very differently. And we're all very unique little creatures here on this planet. But I was just wondering for you, like, have you found that there's been anything, obviously there has been, like, successful for you when you're managing your EDS?
I think, I'll be very real with you. Unfortunately, in the life and the world we live in, healthcare, the right healthcare is usually given to those with the privilege to be able to afford it.
Yes, agreed.
I live in the UK with a crumbling NHS system. And if it wasn't for me having the privilege to be able to afford private healthcare, my EDS would not be managed at all. And so I am very lucky that my EDS is quite well managed. But a lot of that, honestly, my management has come down to self-management and holistic approaches.
Mm-hmm.
It's been largely movement, diet, sleep, hydration, supplements, and that's what's made the biggest difference. But I'm also not naive that I have the privilege of access to the latest papers and the latest knowledge and the latest podcasts and the latest people and the latest influencers because of the nature of where the space that I work. So that's why I always fully hold my hands up of being fully aware of the privilege that I hold, and that's not usual at all. When I first discovered movement and how much it could help, was when I actually attempted to walk the London Marathon in 2011. My right leg rotates 40 degrees in, and I was really struggling with extreme pain and not being able to walk more than a couple of miles, as I said. And having sought 3 different opinions and my surgeon being so reluctant to operate, he said, I really don't think we have a choice but to give you a femoral osteotomy, which is basically breaking your leg and resetting it. And he said, you have to do everything you can to build up your muscles to be as strong as you can be going into that surgery. And me being me, I didn't want my end point to be a surgery. I wanted my end point to be something exciting. Yeah. And we were doing a bucket collection at the London Marathon for EDS UK. And I saw a guy walking the marathon with a fridge on his back.
Oh, yeah, I saw those guys this year.
If he can do it, I can do it. And so I set myself that April the task of walking the marathon, and then some producer and director friends heard and said we should make this into a film. It would be great. And so I had a documentary film crew follow me for the whole process and walk the whole marathon with me. And it was made into a film called Issues with My Tissues, which you can watch for free on YouTube, which followed me as the first known person at the time to complete the marathon. And I walked it in 8 hours and 18 minutes. I fractured my foot on the 13th mile.
Oh, no.
But adrenaline kind of got me through. And it was an incredible experience. But what it did more than anything is I remember halfway through the surgeon saying to me, oh, my God, I can't believe how much stronger your leg is and how much better you're walking. You know, there might actually be a world where you might get away with not having surgery because the muscles are helping you so much. And it gave me the knowledge and awareness of how much movement and muscle strength can help someone with EDS. Now, again, I had the privilege of having a team around me that got me from zero deconditioned to a state where I could walk the marathon. And that was having a concentrated team around me, knowing my body, that gave me the tools and the knowledge I then needed to go off and do it on my own. And I now go to the gym 4 to 5 days a week. I sauna 20 minutes every day when I go. I had to build that up because of my POTS. And although on paper I have a meniscus tear, I have a tendon tear in my ankle, I have a big glute tear in my right leg, I have a labral tear on my right leg, my liver sits in my pelvis, I have 2 prolapsing heart valves. I have a lot on paper, but I actually live a very good quality of life because of all of those things that I do. And the second I feel pain, instead of resting, I now go to the gym. And I think, but I have the guardrails to be able to know what I should and shouldn't do. My kind of rule of thumb is if it hurts whilst I'm doing it, then I need to stop. Because everyone hurts a bit after the gym, and it's learning what are DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, versus it being something that I've pushed. And that takes time, and it takes knowledge to understand your body and knowing what you should and shouldn't push. And it's not easy. But at 46 years old, I'm, thank God, touch wood, healthier than I've ever been, albeit on paper with lots wrong. And all of my tears, I've been told, could have surgery. And I've said no every time because I know they'll just tear again. I've had 3 surgeries on my right ankle, that the tendon that's torn, and it's torn again every time, and I'm not doing it again. And when I'm active, it stays pretty well managed. And I've learned what does and doesn't work for my body, and I'm very grateful for it. But I love walking now, and it's very much part of what I do every day. I walk whenever I can. I have a treadmill right next to me here, and I have a standing desk, and I try and walk every day. Today is a day where I have not had 30 seconds even between each call, and it's nearly 5 o'clock here in the UK. So I have not moved really today, but on the whole, I try and do as much movement as I possibly can. It really makes a huge difference for me.
Yeah. Now, did you end up getting that hip surgery? Just because
Nope.
Oh, you didn't? Okay, great.
Didn't need it.
Awesome. That's great. I think like I'm listening to you speak. I think I have like almost the exact same thing going on with my hip as you. My hip, I call it spaghetti leg, where my hip just kind of like whoops out like when I'm walking and running. Kind of just like fall out of the socket, pop out, just like whoop whoop. And I also have been threatened with a PAO surgery as well. Where they crack your hip and then they put it back into place, which I also haven't gotten. So hopefully we can hold off on that. But just an interesting note for me. I was like, wow, someone else who's like almost got the exact same thing going on with their body. Who would have thunk that, you know? Very crazy. But yeah, I mean, for me too, like definitely movement has been really important. I mean, I only got my EDS formally diagnosed back in like February. Juliana has been dealing with spaghetti leg for a while now and chronic pain for quite a while. So there's that. But I have had people ask me, they're like, Juliana, you seem so much better. Like, what's going on? Like, what have you been doing? They're like, are you taking new medications or anything? I'm like, no, literally, I've just been doing a lot of physical therapy and like hitting the gym like 3 days a week on top of the running that I'm doing, because it just is crazy how much just like feeling like doing strength work and physical therapy and going to the gym, it just improves your quality of life so much when you're able to just be a human and not have the wind blow and just be like, oh no, another muscle tear because the wind blew at me funny or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's hard to quantify just how much movement can make a huge difference. Really.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll also double down on your kind of like the privilege of the healthcare system being maybe why some of us are able to like be a little bit healthier than others. Cause I totally acknowledge that too. Like I do acupuncture once a week, which is out of pocket. I get a massage once a month, which is out of pocket. I have access to physical therapy because of my insurance, things like that. But I have an EDS specific physical therapist that I see once every now like every 6 months, who is out of pocket and things like that. And there are, even in Massachusetts again, where there's like a pretty robust healthcare system, most of the people that you can see who are like EDS quote unquote specialists, like the Meldownies or like there's a clinic up in New Hampshire that it specifically sees hypermobile people, but they're all out of pocket. They're like thousands of, I've not seen these people because I don't have that like much pocket change, but like it's pricey. It can definitely be pricey to manage a chronic illness. And like, I would be lying if I wasn't going to say that I'm like scared as to what's going to happen when I can't afford these things or when someone retires or whatever it is. Like, it's terrifying to think about that fact that like we are so dependent on the healthcare system and also just dependent on like either medications, movement, like access to certain healthcare or like medical professionals. It's definitely an interesting spot to be in for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But now with the London Marathon experience, that's super interesting to me. You planned on walking it from the start. Did you ever have like a thought to like run it, or you were like, nope, I'm just going to walk it? I do not think that. Okay. I didn't know if that was on your goal list at all.
I don't enjoy it. It hurts me to run. I don't have the stamina for it. So no, never on my agenda.
Yeah. I mean, that's totally fine. Like, and 8 hours for walking a marathon, that's a pretty respectable pace that you were holding. So like,
it was okay. They were starting to clear the track from when I was finishing up, but I was happy with it. My target was 8 hours, so I was just over it.
I mean, I think that's, as someone who now does like ultra marathons, which are like half walking anyway, I feel like that's a pretty respectable walking pace, to be honest. So kudos to you again. And like from that experience, it sounds like you learned a lot of things about your body. What would you say was like the most, obviously the foot fracture could be up there too. Like what was the most challenging thing about either or the training or the execution of that goal? Because this feels like probably one of the bigger physical goals you've held for yourself, if I'm not correct.
Yeah, especially from the point of deconditioning that I was starting from. I did it with Pilates and some gym work. And every week I did an increasing gym outdoor walk. So started at, a mile and worked my way up. and did it over 6 months. So that was largely how I got to the point where I was ready to get on that starting line. But I recommend you watch the documentary because it kind of covers all the challenges I hit upon the way.
Okay. I didn't know you had a documentary about it, so now I'm excited to go watch that this evening at the end of the day. And I will also link it down below in the episode description. So just in case anyone else is interested and they would like to watch it later on. So Laura, I guess we'll kind of like round out with like, if you could tell like someone who's either questioning that they have hypermobility or EDS, or they know, like, what would you tell these people? Is there like something that you would want to reassure them of? Is there somewhere we would like them to go look and somewhere to look at and maybe get some resources from? What are your closing thoughts if you're like, okay, all people who have EDS should know this 1 or 2 or 3 things, you know?
I would say that, things seem pretty bleak at the moment, but I would have hope that there's light at the end of the tunnel and there's hope on the horizon. With the new classification that's coming out in December, the aim is for that to increase people being diagnosed and have more access to management and care. And all the dissemination work that's planned after that by the society as well. Check out our website, www.ehlers-danlos.com, where you can find us on Instagram. You can find me on Instagram, Laura.Bloom and Ehlers.Danlos. Follow the work we're doing and come and join our community and know that you're not alone. Yeah,
I think that's the most important thing too, knowing that you're not alone. And one of my mantras that I repeat to myself when I'm running is you're never alone, because there's always someone else who's dealing with something that's either really similar or the same. So I love that sentiment. But Laura, let's round out the episode with what shoe do you choose to use? So you can tell me either your favorite shoe for walking / running / being active of all time or currently. It's up to you. You can name more than one shoe if you'd like.
I'm smirking because my podiatrist would kill me because what I should wear on my feet is not generally what I do wear on my feet. For the marathon, I wore New Balance.
Okay.
At the gym at the moment, I'm wearing Adidas.
Okay.
And I probably don't prioritize my footwear quite in the way that I should. But I would say probably if I had to pick one that I would lean back on, it's New Balance.
Okay. Was the London Marathon supported by New Balance at that point? Were they sponsored by New Balance?
No, I went to a foot clinic and they measured my gait and they put me in the best shoes based on that.
And you did it exactly right. That's exactly right. As a former running shoe employee, thank you for doing that. And thank you for not just taking someone else's advice and buying a shoe because like your neighbor said it was a good shoe. That happens way more than you think it would. And then you get people who are like, I'm in pain. I'm like, I understand because this shoe does not fit you properly, my friend. So, okay. We love that. Well, Laura, before we go, why don't you just tell us once more where people can find you, just like the brief, like, again, the Instagram tags, the website. And I will put those down below as well, too, just so people know exactly where to find you.
Yeah, you can find us on Instagram at Lara.Bloom, Lara, not Laura. Americans love to call me Laura. So Lara.Bloom, Ehlers.Danlos, EHLERS.Danlos, DANLOS, and www.ehlers-danlos.com.
Great. Awesome. And friends, again, I will put that down in the episode description below. And if you would like to get in contact with me over here on Runna, it's runnahpod@gmail.com or runnahpod on Instagram. But that will round out the episode today. And Laura, thank you again so much for being on here.
Thank you. It's been great to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And we'll see everyone soon. Goodbye, friends. Thank you for listening to this episode of Runna. This podcast is edited, hosted, and produced by me, Juliana Coughlin. Brought to you in part by the Falmouth Running Club and the Falmouth Community TV station. If you'd like to connect with us, you can find us on Instagram and on TikTok at runnahpod. And you can send us an email at runnahpod@gmail.com. And our original theme music was brought to you by the one and the only wonderful Jeffrey Hutton. And keep up the great work. I'm proud of you.